right, Jim. We are here again doing a live Q&A for day 2. Thank you for being here again. And I so appreciate, given your life is busy and chaotic.
Thank you very much, Claire. It's lovely to see you and lovely to be here. And yes, dancing on the chaos and very much reminding myself of natural body and some of the things that I said that remind me of, how to approach things. Mm-hmm. So yes, thank you for being here.
Okay, thank you. So I think to start with, again, is since we are on day 2, the topic is on natural body. What do you, or how do you define, or what do you see as natural body?
It's for me, it's an incredibly nebulous, vague concept, mm-hmm. And I wouldn't want to begin to try and explain it, other than a recognition of being and awareness, mm-hmm. of the experience amongst all the other ones that are being experienced by other things in other ways, and the in that interconnectedness at the very quantum level of the flickering in and out of particles, and the cyclical nature of nature. It's almost like a condensation of flow. Mm-hmm. But like I say, I can't begin to explain it. Would you like to have a shot at that?
Let me tease out a little bit more after hearing what I said. I so truly appreciate, because over there it's late, and given everything going on in your family, particularly tonight, I so appreciate. So
I'll take that as carte blanche to talk rubbish.
So as you were saying, the words are really coming out. Like there's a lot of, again, like you said, nebulous. It's not an easy thing to define. But maybe we're not here trying to give a definitive definition, but rather just to really, I suppose, present in a way that what are the key things that we pay attention to when it comes to natural body. And when you were talking, I think the word that came to my attention, because there was a lot of words, and again, the way you communicate is very different from mine, but the word that came out is other, the other. And you were referencing the other in terms of the situation, right? So when we come to think about the word the other, obviously there's a differentiation, right? Whatever you put there. So how do you differentiate in terms of the other situation? And also, of course, given the context of interconnectedness of nature, because that's how nature is. So would you be able to elaborate a little bit more, again, given the bigger question that, when people look at natural body, what are the pointers, if you like, and also elaborate a bit more on the other situation in the context of the natural body?
Yeah, I'd absolutely love to. After you kick us off for your pointers, I recognise that last night I talk a lot. I talk a lot anyway. Okay. Tonight I am going to encourage and invite you to talk.
Okay. So I appreciate you flick the question back to me, and I'll take the lead. To me, it's very interesting that it's a bodily sensation, and when I say the bodily sensation, it's actually on the spectrum of the negative side. So if we have to put the label of positive emotions and negative emotions in this conversation, excuse me, and when we experience the negative bodily sensations such as stress, for example. When you have a pit in your stomach, that's normally, for most people, when they feel a bit stressed, excuse me, they feel that bodily sensation, or have tensions around their shoulders or lower back. Or maybe it's just that that sensation on your chest when you feel, oh, I'm so nervous, right? And or I feel just so angry that, like, here is almost like you feel the sense of pain almost when the anger is very intense. So I think for me, that's, I mean, and of course, it's like, that's how I can differentiate, okay, when I have all these negative bodily sensations, and if I'm not aware, sorry, excuse me, if I'm not aware, obviously there's no way that I can be in a state of natural body. But then as I progress my state, either by centering or by releasing my negative emotion, and we're condensing the time in a very, like, short 15 seconds here, because we are talking about the progression of one's state of being. So as I become not aware to becoming aware of, okay, I'm in a state of anger, for example, and now as I progress more, go, okay, actually, I can see how the situation can be true from the other perspective, and then I further progress, go, okay, why don't I just take a walk in nature and asking nature to support me to release this emotion of anger, and to a point that at the end that I feel, actually, I don't feel angry anymore, and because I don't have that anger within me, and therefore the next decision that I'm going to make is not going to be influenced by my state of anger. And therefore now I am in a state of natural body. So to me, it is a progression from not being aware when we are caught up in the negative state of emotions. And I think the first pivotal point is really that we're becoming aware. Go, okay, I'm becoming aware of my bodily sensations. Actually, there's something going on, because I feel that's so important. Because when people, when they're not ready, for example, because we can't say, okay, you're either aware or not aware. That's like, people will become ready and aware when it's time, really. And when they're not aware that, okay, I'm having these bodily sensations, but they're still caught up in their situations and narratives, then I think they haven't come to the threshold of the first pivotal point, if I want to put it in that language. So I think that first pivotal point of, okay, I'm experiencing this, and I must have a pattern of narratives going on in my situation, instead of like just keep going, like, this is what's happening outside, and has nothing to do with me. And with that pivotal point, then you can progress further and regulate your own state, and to the point that if you want to go to nature, because I think in general people feel maybe more connected. Again, it's my experience. People can be quite connected with nature just in their house. In my situation, I always feel more connected when I take a walk outside, to the point that you no longer feel that you're caught up in that situation anymore. you go, okay, that could be true, that could not be true, or I'm not bothered with that anger anymore. And I'm just going to get on with my next action and decision. And I'm going to trust now, okay, without that anger in my way, what is the best decision I can make, so that I can actually, now that the wisdom of the body is there, because no longer has the influence of anger.
Thank you very much for that. So taking that way of looking at it as approaching readiness, what kind of signs might people look for or experience in your experience that they are approaching that point of readiness? Can they begin to trust their judgment more and more as they approach readiness?
When you say readiness, can you be a bit more precise?
Yeah, sure. In as much as you talk about being ready to be aware, or to have that nature connection. Okay. So how can people recognize that they are approaching that point of readiness, and the signs that you can think of?
Okay. To me, I think it takes some personal experiences, like it's just in general life experiences, to a point that, and I think people, I cannot put it in a precise language, but I think each one of us is almost like, okay, I projected enough outward, but something's is not moving. Like, I want the situation to change, and to a point that I'm so sick of feeling all this accumulation of negative emotions, perhaps, that now I think there's something going on, because everything outside me, that I can only do so much, that I'm so sick of bottling up everything inside me, and I want to do something. And I think that it actually takes a lot of courage to realize that the moment you realize negative emotions, it actually has something to do with yourself. Because I think our patterns of thoughts, because thoughts create emotions, right? Like in this context, it's a negative emotions, is some of the thought patterns we can recognize quite easily. Go, oh, okay, I don't need to bother with myself that anymore. I walked on that. And so it becomes, it's not a dominant thinking pattern that you identify with a lot, just like somebody else thinking pattern, that, okay, that person is becoming quite angry in that situation, not because you're not showing any empathy, but you just can see a different point of view very quickly. But with other thinking patterns, and it really varies person to person, that you feel there is such a force behind it, because it's more deep seated, and therefore when that situation comes, I think a person is perhaps will feel a lot more challenged. Go, okay, I'm feeling these negative emotions, but yet I cannot move away from the situation. We're not saying, okay, we're putting our head in the sand, because I think that's where a lot of people feel, okay, you're just in denial when you try to move away. You're not actually facing this situation. I think there is a difference, because when we have a very, I think a situation, we can always create a healthy distance away from it. And that healthy distance is by spending time in nature, realizing that, for example, that if you see an ugly situation that makes you feel very, very angry, because it's not in alignment with your personal values that you highly respect and regard. But then you take a walk in nature and you go, wow, this bush here like has beautiful blue flowers, because the blue coloring of flower in my personal experience is it's rare, right? Like you don't see blue flowers every single time. And you go, wow, nature is actually beautiful. See, when you create that positive nature experiences in your life, you're already creating a distance from that situation, because all of a sudden your world is no longer, okay, I'm just so pissed off with that situation. And the world is just like that, period, right? And now there is a sense of beauty coming in, right? So the world is not like that, period, right? Like at least it's half and half, right? So again, it's by creating a healthy distance and realizing that you don't need to feel that all the time. And you don't need to, I mean, I'm not saying that situation does not exist. The intention is to create a healthy distance from that situation so that you can allow a alternative, a more positive perspective to emerge. And that's why we go to nature, identifying the beauty in nature is the first step. And then as you progress along and along, and again, it's a hypothetical situation, there'll be more things that nature will inspire you. And then you'll see a different light about that situation that you previously were so frustrated about.
Thank you. Very, very beautifully said. And filled my mind with so much. I'm trying to take all of what you said.
I mean, previously you were on track about talking about that readiness. So we're becoming ready to become aware. Yeah. So yeah. I so appreciate again that you're so like being here.
It's well, thank you. But in actual fact, no, it's just what you gave me there was so huge. It was spilling out the tops of my ability to, okay. Try and weave it all together. But one thing that the aspect that you mentioned, one of the aspects you mentioned, is that appearance of beauty in the middle of being pissed off, and that there is beauty in the world. And what went through my mind at the time is that beauty, that flower has always been there, or for however that flower's life for. And it's purely down to the perception and awareness of the pissed off person that allows that flower to be part of that their shared reality and experience. And so, and it also reminded me of an article I saw in the paper today, I think it was, which I won't get into out of respect, but there was a quote in there, and I think it was a quote from Leonard Cohen actually, about don't run away from the darkness, because there's always a crack, and it's through the cracks that the light shines. I'm sure badly repeated, remembered. And it strikes me as a very similar thing. And I wonder if I'm understanding that resonance there with that quote from what you're saying. It's lovely, beautiful. And the acceptance there as well. And also that aspect of natural body comes into that through the integration of the realities, doesn't it? And so would you say that that exploration, is possible by pursuing any of these small details within nature and just pushing your boundaries, so that regardless of what any individual's interpretation of what their natural body is and what it means to them and how they interpret it and sense it. It's about that ever exploration with the curiosity, wherever your boundaries are, whatever your experience of, this is the extent of my natural body in whichever concept or how many dimensions or whatever it is to you. The constant acquisition of clarity and awareness brings more understanding of the relatability of the experiences, so that the boundary of our natural body is defined by what's happening between the appearance of this individual, this collection of individual bits, and this other thing. And the experiences that we have are actually that interaction that can only exist when awareness exists in a way.
Yeah, I so resonate when you say that can only exist when awareness exists. And I so want to bring back to what you just said about the quote previously in relation to darkness, because I'll talk about my own personal darkness, and you're fully aware of that, was my cancer recovery. I think at that point in time we all have awareness as individuals. If we have a healthy brain function, like we can recognize, okay, this is my soul and this is my awareness, right? But when it comes to the context of darkness and natural body, I think the power of nature is, when I say nature, I specifically mean the natural world, is that it allows us to recognize what is wholeness. Like, I'll use the example of the blind man and the elephant, right? Like, if we're caught in a thought pattern that we've become so accustomed to, people may not be very comfortable with this analogy, then you just become aware of part of what the elephant is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, then that person goes out to nature and had a period of personal development work by deepening their relationship with nature. And then they go, actually, why do I realize that after I spend time in nature, that pattern of thoughts that is so persistent, usually in my head, in my personal situation, was why I had the cancer, was fears and doubt of recovering, of dying. And because at that point it was just, doctors can't really tell you a lot. And even when they tell you, your personal interpretation of that, they can't help, right? So for me, it was, after I spent so much time in nature doing my cancer recovery, I realized why that pattern of fears and doubts just went into the background when I was in nature. But then I spent more time at home, and of course I had family around me to look after me. I was very fortunate. But when you didn't have to do work, and when your sole focus is on your recovery, you just spend time thinking about it naturally. So that made me realize, actually, there must be something going on here. I noticed the difference. And I noticed how I feel when I was in nature, that I just don't need to spend all this time to thinking about my health and recovery. There's so many things that are beautiful, and that just make me feel actually things are not as bad as I thought, right? Then as I went deeper into my personal development work, I do realize that I think it's my personal experience that when we really reach a place of deepening our relationship with nature, nature is no longer the natural world. Like it becomes one with our awareness. Like it's tangible. but it just becomes one with our awareness. When I reached at that place, and I was like, yeah, I can so see that why my fears and doubts, they're not real. And that's why I could eventually release them when I was recovering from cancer. So yeah. So coming back to your point, natural body could not happen when one does not have the awareness. And that awareness actually brings us to wholeness. And that wholeness, a representation of that wholeness, is the natural world.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing your story in that way. And it kind of suggests to me that the natural body is multifaceted in its entirety, from the way that you're describing it. And would witness state, entering into witness state, having that distance, stepping out of the reactive experience, being pulled along by the tiger's tail, hanging onto the tail. Can I ask if that experience through your recovery, in what ways did the facility of nature to absorb your fears and concerns and griefs, how did that impact and help you with the way that you dealt with other people and your expectations or needs from support from other people when you were now accessing a support which was maybe different?
Okay. Just going to take a moment to make sure that question lands on me, because I think it's quite it's quite a rich question. And again, if I'm not addressing the answer or the question, that you feel, okay, I'm deviating from the question, let me know, okay? Because it's quite a rich question. I just want to make sure that I answer in a way that you feel, okay, clear, that I'm just gonna let her go and then move on to the next one. But if I'm not clear, just let me know. I think, again, through that experience is, and I say that my cancer experience was actually a blessing to me, because it made me so much aware of my bodily sensations. Because when you have a health issue like that, you go, okay, I need to pay attention to my body more, right? And coming back to the negative bodily sensations, etc., that I'm not saying I'm aware 100% of the time of my bodily sensations, but even with the situations that I felt I was caught up in that moment in time, that it doesn't take, say, an hour, for example, for me to realize that I was actually caught up. The time that I took is becoming less and less. So I realized I was caught up in that situation, and then I was reflecting, okay, so I was caught up, how did I feel in that particular time, if I had any memories of how I felt in that point in time. So I think that was how my experience with the support of nature during my illness got translated or transferred into my everyday life situation and interactions with others. And I think what also happened is, I think by spending time in nature, more and more, it's a gradual process. You realize that everything is happening outside you because the world is bigger than your body. But eventually, through your senses, through your experiences, it all comes down to you. Right. So again, we can still speak of the experiences that's happening outside in the world. But then You are the one who is perceiving it, right? And I'm not saying that we don't take actions to bring equality, to bring justice to the world that is not, equal, that is not treating people in a way that is right. What I'm saying is that, again, coming back to that situation, is how can you create a healthy distance to from that situation, so that more clarity or a perspective that can help you evolve can emerge. Right? Because again, when you look at nature, like people might say that, okay, it's like you spend time, you're caught up in the situation, and then you spend time in nature, you see the beauty. Like from the appearance, you might go, but these are two totally different situations, right? Like they might go, hey, one is about this situation so bad and so, unequal, and the other situation is about nature. But again, I would say that person could, like I use the word could, because I'm not gonna advise or anything. It's like somebody has to feel they're ready to go and spend time in nature, because the more time you spend in the natural world, the more you realize actually that perception of, okay, here's a situation that is so bad and needs to be addressed, to here, nature is so beautiful with blue flowers. These two has, like, underneath it all, like there's such a deep connection, like there's no separation between these two situations. So coming back to, I think I lost track a little bit, is to realize that yes, everything is happening outside me, but look at my emotions, look at my bodily sensations. How can I shift in a way? Because what I realized is that no matter how I felt previously, before I went into the park, how I felt afterwards is a lot lighter. So the situation may not have changed. So what changed is my experience of it, right? And I'm not saying not to take action to address the negative situations, but how you take action. Because I think a lot of people, they go, okay, I want to take action, but how you actually take it, in what in what state you are doing the action in.
Yes.
Is
and I think
it's really important. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Claire, I thought you stopped. Yeah, and the way in which, as you say, that the way in which the issue or the problem is dealt with, or the situation is dealt with. I think you referred earlier to dismantling the problem compared to just walking away, moving away from that discomfort, uncomfort, misalignment, disharmony, whatever it is. So thereby the problem becomes irrelevant. So you spend less time and energy focusing on the problem, dismantling it, understanding it, taking it apart. Yeah. That's equivalent energy and focus has got the other approach much closer to where they would like to be, where that's that beneficial and positive future is. Which isn't to ignore or to deny the problem.
Yeah.
But it's just focusing on, well, what steps do I need to do to reach that place of preference where I am feeling in less challenge, more in harmony, that things are easier, because of that interaction of all the things around, just seemingly, working better and smoother for my experience at that time.
Yeah.
And an interesting thing, I thought it's interesting, is that when you speak about moving away from a problem, there are times when there is an option, a choice, a dilemma. You can move away from a problem and make it safe for you, whilst the problem is still unsafe for other things, other people. It's still detrimental somewhere. So, you can then say, well, look, to make it safe in its totality, it's going to require transformation of some sort around that situation. So, that decision between moving away and making it safe to you in your experience versus actually dismantling and addressing the problem. But I think even that is, excuse me, again, if you look at it from a point of view of the non-duality and the lack of barrier and differentiation, of course, it isn't any different, because it can't make you safe in your individuality and on your own, because if there is detriment anywhere, then you are being harmed as much as any other part of the universe. So it brings another element to, well, therefore the step is transformation of that. But again, recognizing, tying that in with what you were saying about the lack of distinction between right and wrong, because that's a perceptual thing, a perspective-based assessment. But of course, there is, I say, of course, how would that fit in, if at all, with life-affirming rather than life-denying? So, I mean, there is there a force of good and bad? Is there right and wrong at some level? And how do we, I suppose that's natural attraction, isn't it, really?
Yeah. I mean, again, the question has so many layers again.
I'm not the master of an elegant question at the moment, am I?
No, it's I appreciate the richness and the multifacets. I think that we're all humans, right? We have morals, we have values, and I'm not saying everybody agree on everything, but in this world there is good and evil, right? Like, I mean, of course it takes degrees and extent, and I'm not going to go into the details because, like, we are all healthy, psychologically healthy adults, at least the group that we've got here, right? And there is right or wrong, because we have our values, right? According to my value, what you did here is okay. According to somebody else's value, it's totally not okay, right? And I suppose when you're saying the life-affirming and life, what was the other word?
Denying, I chose, which
might
not be the most suitable.
Yeah, and I think the life-affirming and life-denying, from the wholeness point of view, is if you're really denying, you can feel it. Like, I mean, to me, that's, again, coming to these bodily sensations and feelings. If you're really denying, you can feel it. If people don't feel it, I'm not working with those people. And if I am, I would try to find a way to provoke their awareness. But I think denying is such a strong emotion to me that even people don't realize, like, they may not have the awareness, but once you provoke their awareness to help facilitate their awareness, they would feel it. Like, you don't need to argue in such a way to make them realize that they're denying. If they're denying, they would feel it. Yeah. And when it's life-affirming, you would feel the situation that you are in, your perception of the situation, and your values and your actions are totally aligned. Right. And if there's in the reality, it's not so easy in two spectrums. there's a lot of messiness in between, right? And again, is how do we deal with all this messiness or gray areas in the middle? There's really no one particular formula. But again, coming to that point of awareness is, how are you feeling with this situation? And to me, I think since my recovery from the illness, I want to go all the way down, like down until I feel there's no perception or perspective holding me back. I'm not in denial, and I'm not in a situation that I feel I'm caught up in that. Because when we have values, for example, some values can stay with us for a lifetime, right? Other values, as we evolve, at least to me personally, it's just like branches, right? When there's a strong wind that comes through or whatever, the tree goes, okay, I need to survive as a totality, and I'm no longer holding on to that branch because it's just not worth it. So here you go. I'm just going to drop that value because the intelligence of that tree perceives that it's much better to drop that branch than causing other damages, because they can always grow somewhere else. So yeah.
Can I interrupt? Sorry, I know it's not good
Okay.
form. With a slightly cheeky question, because it just occurred to me with the trees and that decision to lose a branch. And I hope you don't mind the slight flippancy, but it just struck me about when you see a tree that's been blown over, is it due to stubbornness? And is that tree, its values, its priorities have become confused to the point where rather than losing a branch, it got blown over? Or perhaps reaching a point where there was no more to give. It had either lost all the branches that it could, or there wasn't anything appropriate to lose in order to sacrifice, in order to maintain overall stability.
The way when I see a trees, like, because Melbourne had very strong winds like a few weeks ago, and I've actually seen quite a few trees, like strong trees, got blown over and then it just fell. To me, I don't think about a lot of whys anymore, like particularly in this, when we come to the natural phenomenon. I always think, like, if I have to put in the human language, I go, the tree has served its purpose as a standing tree. Now the purpose is as a tree that's, got blown over, and I don't know what the council is going to do with that tree. Later on, I find out some of the big trunks or branches got chopped up, and then some were left still in the field. So I presume that those chopped up bits will serve the purpose. As you know, there's still going to be sugars, whatever it is. I mean, again, I'm not an expert in that. It will help whatever in that patch, whether it's a small flower or plant, it will help, right? So to me, is that I no longer think about the why, but I rather think about, okay, obviously it's the next stage. So
So constant transformation. One thing that sprang into my mind during your offering of the story of your illness was the concept of composting, and the ability that you seem to be describing of taking all those worries and concerns, taking them into nature and converting them into, using those to actually go back into the human community and be lighter and require less from, to be stronger. So needing less from others around you. And that constant, as you then just recently talked about, the cyclical breaking down and reuse of nutrients and resources. Reminded me of the story about the session where the tree comes crashing down and the eggs from a bird's nest get smashed on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And the loss of that potential expression of those birds being tragic in some ways, but at the same time, nothing is lost, and that all gets reabsorbed and feeds and in some way or other its environment. And so the need for a why is less, because it becomes almost a why what. So it's a beautiful way to you explain of looking at how to take in, reabsorb, and transform, and offer back in a useful and beneficial way, because of the awareness, the initial awareness, and being in that witness state, to be able to use that and transform it and pass it on.
Yeah.
So thank you very, very much for that.
Yeah. Because I think when we think about why, for example, there's just one element, like when we think about why, because then taking my illness situation, when I was ill, I did not know why. Like I could think about why, right? But then it's not until, now it's 7 years later, I realized, okay, I can see the why. But then 10 years down the track, I may have a different perspective about the why, right? So I think it's when we're having the why, again, it's okay because we're humans, right? We think about the why, and sometimes have a purpose can motivate us. But I think having the why somehow constrains us as well. But if you don't have that constraint and go, okay, actually there is a natural unfolding here. It's not easy to always trust it because life sometimes is brutal, right? But somehow, it's just, I think it's just with, whether you call it awareness or perspective, is how do you want to experience life again? Is you know what I mean? Would you rather to walk down and go into the roots of all the evils? Can you really extract all the evils by doing that? Because when I think about nature, the way nature transforms, I cannot put it into words. Like, how do you transform from A to B in my situation? I got no idea, because the unfolding of it is out of my hands, right? Like you'll meet someone at that point in time and then things occur. Had I met that person a year before, or first when I had that cancer that helped me transform, I might go, okay, thank you very much. It was a nice meeting, but I do not need your service. Your service is not what I require. So, it's just, I think having that openness and go, I do not know what's going on here. And there is a purpose, and nature's purpose is different sometimes from our human perspective. We can have a glimpse of that, but you go, okay, and it's okay to have a glimpse of that. You don't need to see the whole perspective. That's the beauty of being a human, right? Otherwise we would just be, okay, back into the earth and die. And then you can do
seen it all, done it, know it all.
Yeah, you can
done now.
Yeah, you don't need to be in this physical body, right? So yeah, so it's like I don't know the purpose, but we'll just have to see what evolves next.
I love the way you put that, all of it, but amongst it was the as there is no why, how would you like to, you know,
Mm,
find the joy, enjoy it,
yeah.
celebrate rather than chase the evils, as you said.
Mm,
Because if there is no reason, the why becomes why not. So
mhm.
beautiful. And Claire, thank you so much for the openness with which you've described and explored the story of your illness and your illness itself in this session.
That's okay.
I've got admiration for that honesty and openness.
Yeah. To me, it actually took time. I think it was even 2019. That was before the pandemic, obviously. I went to some Toastmasters and I thought, oh, well, I've told people my stories before, one-to-one situation. I'm pretty sure I'll be all right because that was from the hindsight. That's why I went to the place in the first time, right?
Mm.
And then off I went in talking about my story in front of people. And I was like, geez, you're crying. Do you realize you're crying? um, and I don't know how long it took. I think it was about maybe 6 months or something like that. Actually, I'm feeling still a little bit emotional inside me as I was talking to you, right? I mean, the intensity just gets less and less. And then I remember one of the instructor here, she said, keep talking, keep speaking when you feel that emotion. Don't just stop, because when you talk, like you'll be able to make it. And then she said, and then until one day you'll speak in front of people and you go, I don't feel that anymore. It's somebody else's story. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Mm.
Amazingly deep, such depth to it. Thank you, Claire. I would love to explore more. However, I'm realizing that we are nearly on an hour.
Yeah. Just wondering about, I suppose, again, just to give people more, because we are doing a mini course, if you like. It is presented in a way that it's light on learning and more focused on experience. But nevertheless, we are talking here. And I just want to touch upon the intention, because with Natural Body, you designed the body scan, right? What's your intention behind that exercise when you designed it?
Well, and the body scan itself, it's nothing new. I certainly didn't design that aspect of it.
Yeah.
So much as so that's I wouldn't want to claim credit for that. But it's based on it, and it kind of plays around the body scan. The intention was both to acquaint and become increasingly acquainted and familiar with the bodily sensations, how they change. And so that's why I suggested trying it in the morning, middle of the day, and the evening, just to see how that affects things. Because of course, when you start to notice differences in effect, you can then look for the patterns, and so that just brings again more awareness, greater perspective. So that can be really helpful in that way. And so the intention was to go from that place of firstly withdrawing the attention into one place, which is part of the body, and then after having spent time aligning not aligning the breath with anything, but just having awareness of breath and physicality, and then exploring the boundaries of perception to you in your experience at that time, and then beginning to play with the the density of the boundaries. So our skin, for example, seems, obviously it's very fragile. It's the largest organ in the body, and it seems a definite boundary. In actual fact, it's not, of course, because we're carrying out gas exchange and losing moisture and all these different things going on. But beyond that as well, that's the physical aspect and the physical explanation or viewpoint of the skin. If we look beyond that and include playing with different sensations and senses and perceptions and experience, the softness of that boundary between us and other or perceived other, that's where we can have that playful exploration of our own individual interpretation of it, our own individual experience of that definition. Just to go to those edges and explore how those edges change, what they actually, if they actually exist. You know, you can get to the point that maybe you'll reach it and you'll get somewhere and you go, oh, hang on, there isn't a boundary there, actually. That was just my perception. It's like yesterday I was talking about the fields that suddenly appeared in my, because I hadn't seen in the hedge. So through perception, being able to draw upon a lot more that is already there. Yeah. And so playing with how our experience and perception can change, and the breadth of change perhaps, and the spectrum can be broadened to as much as happens. Not until we self-actualize or become aware, or anything. It's like it's here today, it's there tomorrow, it's over there next day. Because as you say, there is no definition, distinction. So it's really about playing with that concept, I think.
Yeah, I so appreciate that it's about becoming aware, and then see where the boundaries are, right? Like it's like, okay, coming in and then to a point, then it becomes soft, and then to me it's almost like then coming in and then expansion, like going outwards, because of the boundaries are softening. Yeah, I so appreciate you being here. I want to touch upon one more question, because we are on day 2, and day 1 was all about natural presence. And as you know, nature does not separate. So how do you see, or in your actual practice, how do you play with natural presence and natural body together? Or how do you see, if you want to take the next question, if you feel like, and I totally appreciate that if you feel I'm just getting tired, because I'm taking like a step further, like in terms of like when we're looking at the end of day 5, right?
I do remember, Claire, when I spent some time in Central America, and I traveled from the north to the south over the course of 18 months. And at that point, I found myself at the bottom end in Panama, kind of in my mind as I'm looking south to Brazil, again. If I cross this border, I'm gonna have to do all of South America. So I didn't have time. So
okay, that's okay. Okay, okay, cool. I totally appreciate that. So how do you see the natural presence and natural body play with each other in your experience in nature?
I think in one regard, one way of looking at it might be that as there is no separation and at a fundamental level, then the distinction is not huge at all, and is it merely just a condensation of intention and awareness in the way that it's presenting itself, or the way that even that it is being perceived by us at that time. So that self-referential or the paradox of self-referential unity, and having that aspect of regarding self in minute detail to the point that it almost becomes individual, but it isn't. So that's one way of looking at it, which, as you said, is kind of late. So that's one way. In a different way, I would perhaps think about again that interaction and balance and blend of intention, awareness, and I think there's that, maybe that dance of collaboration, working with, because again you will obviously meet exactly the same paradox. It's like, collaborate with whom if not yourself? So obviously it's the same thing, but there is that sense. And so the dance and the it's almost like a triangulation point, or if you take these different intention and the awareness and somewhere there is a spot where those all meet, and that's the experience. So using that to feel into where natural body is in the context of the situation that you're in at that time, whether that's the Scottish Highlands or the depths of the Mariana Trench or the depths of the rainforest in Central America. It's all about perception and perspective, and as such is completely amorphous. You can easily take that to the point where, well, in which case, why are we choosing, or why are we allowing our experience to be restrained by these physical bodies? Why not just set ourselves free and drop them and become that awareness, the unified awareness? And again, it's like, well, I don't know. Do you? Why do we ask the great unity? Because I haven't got a clue. So, the presence and body, it's almost like a convenient way of presenting it to oneself and others, and a way of perhaps keeping an anchor on with sanity, because it's once you can be challenging at times trying to get your head around it. I haven't at all. I haven't even mentioned these. I would love to talk about a particular recent book written about quantum, a new way of seeing the impacts of quantum physics on the way that we interpret our existential experience, but not now.
Yeah, cool. Again, I think the part that really came to me when you were talking is natural body is about eventually how you feel in a connected state with your natural environment, isn't it? And if we're putting in the context of negative emotions, for example, it's not until we progress along in our state of being, until we feel we're actually connected with nature, we are very likely to be influenced by our personal state of being, and therefore in a way that we are not in a natural body, but when we're actually there, feel connected with the greater natural environment, and then we rebalance our emotional state. And then feel that natural body wherever you are.
I would, my bugbear about this separation from nature. I think he said it flippantly. But the thing about I don't think we ever lose our natural body. It's the awareness,
Mhm.
So when I'm feeling least in harmony with nature, I'm I will be very much in my head and just that very
Yeah.
busyness, and I'm not listening to the sensations and all this kind of stuff. I am still in my natural body. I am still experiencing natural body, but a tiny proportion, a tiny aspect. I'm focusing everything on one aspect, one focal point externally to, for argument's sake, it can be either argument, an external point, to the point where I am excluding the awareness of the other aspects of my natural body. And that's the ones that I'm ignoring knowingly, the ones that I might not be aware of at all.
Mhm.
I am not aware that I'm not aware of them. So when I regain that awareness of my experience of natural body becomes broader and
Yeah.
closer towards completeness, more towards completeness rather than less than.
Yeah.
So again, it comes to perspective, I think, for me.
Yeah, I appreciate that. How initially it feels like a separation, but wholeness, like it's that paradox, right?
Mm.
And then as we progress along, then we feel more complete and more whole. Yeah, I so appreciate that distinction. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
Claire,
yeah, thank you so much sacrificing your evening time with your family and then come here live.
well, somebody once said to me that sacrifice is giving something up for something better.
Mm.
So that's how I would like to see this.
Okay.
Thank you very much for giving your morning to this, and again for the support. And yes, I look forward to our explorations and conversations carrying on far beyond the 5-day challenge, Claire.
Yeah. So then we can, at least we got tomorrow, day 3.
Yeah, indeed. I might catch up. Okay, lovely. Thanks very much, Claire. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.